Hello students, welcome again. Today in this session for TS7 Human Resource Development, we are at Unit 11 and we are actually focusing on selection test. We have done a journey already. We have reached to a stage when we interviewed a student or a candidate or an employee rather to send their resumes, get the screening done, first stage, second stage. Now we are actually come to the stage where we have to segregate and see where these candidates stand, and that's where the selection tests are in place. Let's look at the selection test, but before that let's move on to the learning objectives. The first thing that we look at in learning objectives are the type of test. What are different types of tests are being used for selecting? Second is, what is the aptitude of potential ability test? What is it? Now, there are different tests done because we know in hospitality and tourism in specific and job role in general, we have different roles and positions, and hospitality and tourism being more hands-on, one test may not be applicable or one size fits all will not be done. Then we have to look at the next test, which is personality test, because again we are dealing with the human, right? We need to maintain our emotions, we need to keep ourselves calm, and in those tests we do have some limitations. Do we cover everything through the test, or do we need to have an interview? So we'll have a look at it. And obviously, while you're using this test, what are the precautions that we really need to work on or need to be thoughtful of when we are using this selection of tests? So let's start and move on. So selection of the test, the first thing is we're looking at what are different types of tests that are used and can be, they can be put in 4 different categories. Number 1, the category is achievement or intelligence test. I still remember something like IQ. We'll have a look at it. Second comes attitude or potential ability test. Third is personality test, and then comes is interest test. Looks quite interesting. Let's look all of them one by one. As the name says, achievement or intelligence test, it's also called proficiency test. And what they do is they measure the skill or knowledge acquired as a result of a training or on-the-job experience. Now, I know that especially in hospitality and tourism training, more so in hospitality, which is hands-on, you actually have to do some practical training too. So those practical training and those practical tests or even simulations, they actually are, assessing your skills and knowledge that you have acquired during the training. And the next part comes is when you say test for measuring a job knowledge, which comes under trade test. I'll take you again an example that I was in the year 1999, in the year 2000, I had to give a trade test because I was actually selected for merchant ships, merchant navy, and I had to demonstrate if I can cook food properly for Europeans and for Indians too. So that was a trade test that I had to give. Well, that was a physical test, but that can be a verbal test too in your examination, in your selection process. So those which are verbal one, they are looking for your knowledge part more than your skills part, because skills are the one who you demonstrate by action. Knowledge is what you respond to the questions asked to you. It may be oral test, it may be written test, it could be just given a picture and you have to find out what things are missing and what needs to be done, or it could be the performance based on your exam that you give, or maybe even multiple choice questions for that matter. So what exactly is happening? We are looking at knowing how much knowledge do you have, measuring your job knowledge. We also have work sample test. This measure is a test to see if you can work good with the equipment. This test measures the proficiency and how do you handle the system, how good you handle the system. So that's a work sample test. Obviously, it could be given as in a calculation. It could be given as how good you operate your computer. It could be given that you have you give you a question and you to solve through using a software. It could be anything. It could be using a machinery. Now, the example given over here would be if you are given to calculate a room rent and other expenditures to demonstrate for a guest who's staying in a hotel for 3 days. Now, in doing so, use some formulas, use some calculations, and you bring it up, as a result. So you demonstrate that you can use this system, and as well as you can use your own knowledge and skills to respond to the question. Now, these are work sample tests. So they're giving you some, this is actually not necessarily they give you everything about you or a candidate, but yes, it gives us an understanding how much candidate is hands-on or aware of particular software or the formula or the system. Now, then comes is next text, which is aptitude or potential ability test. Now, as the name says, aptitude or potential ability, that means how would you or how a candidate learns new job skills. Now, well, every day we learn, isn't it? And we have a different scenario, especially in hospitality and tourism. We're dealing with customers, humans, right? And our humans may have different issues. They have different thought processes. They may have different requirements. And that's where we actually have to see, we adapt ourselves to new learning, and then how do we learn from there and move on. So a new skill could be there. A computer has come, a different software has come, or different way to book a ticket has come, or different way to market something has come. So all this, how do you learn the new skills? That's where aptitude or potential ability test comes in picture. Now, obviously, we look at the person's sensory and intellectual capacity, how the senses work, how does the person perceive the information, how they use the information, how they calculate the information. So these tests, they focus on learning. So learning from the previous incidents, learning current incidents, or learning from any seminar, memo, email, newsletter, whatnot. And obviously look at the reasoning for doing some actions or moving on, learning on the learnings, that what did you do out of the learning, and then the reasoning why did you do so. And obviously we look at mechanic or service aptitude. Now, customer service is a part and parcel of our industry. So we need to have the aptitude to actually reach out to the customers, give them 100%, and make their day and make sure we give them the best abilities in terms of serving them, in terms of having memories when they have stay with us. Now, and also there are instruments to measure those tests. So there are 3 instruments which are used to measure those tests. The first one is mental test, second is mechanical aptitude test, and third one is psychomotor or skill test. So we shall go one by one, all 3 of them. The first one, which says mental test, obviously when something comes to the mental ability or test about that, we go to IQ to measure the IQ of a person. We also try to find out the mental capacity to deal with new problems. Sometimes people get irritated, or they really do not like it to face new challenges, or sometimes it's quite you can say it's quite a challenge or an issue to deal with angry customer, or a new failure into your computer system, or you're not able to manage how your software is not working. So that could be another, it impacts you mentally, and there's another situation to deal with. So that's another test. And obviously it also gives you an understanding of the fluency on the language, because when you're dealing with someone in an issue, in a problem, so language is something that we'll use to communicate, right? Memory, induction, all those are parts that come under mental test. So these mental tests really put you in understanding what exactly are your IQ levels, are your capacity to deal with the situations and hardships, and obviously the fluency of the language. Now then comes a mechanical aptitude test. As the name says, mechanical. Obviously any type of work with the machines, right? So I will give you an example. I had been working with the slicer in the kitchen for a long time, but I do remember it was in the year 1997, I believe. I was working for Hotel Ashok here in New Delhi. I was doing my training, and when my chef asked me to clean the slicer, well, I was like, oh yes, I can do it. I was quite enthusiastic, and I went to clean the slicer. In cleaning the slicer, after a few minutes, I cut my thumb. Slicer is very sharp, because I did not read the instructions properly, right? So even though my chef would have given me instructions, which I don't remember now then though, but what was it? I actually did not learn it properly. I did not comprehend the instructions properly, and I had an injury in my hand. I cannot forget even today. So mechanical aptitude actually tells you about a person's capacity to learn something, especially with the machines. Usually with the apprentices, because with the evolving of hospitality, a lot of machines have evolved too, and we have been using a lot of machines in our kitchens nowadays, right? And then we need to make sure we understand interacting those equipments, how to manage them, how to clean them, how to use them, and such is required as a mechanical aptitude is required to understand those, and that's where the test is done, so that we actually can get the right people who actually can understand machines and can work with them. Now another test, which is also one of the important tests, is psychomotor or skill test. As the name says, or the test says, it actually gives you person's ability to do a specific job. So it's actually more so towards psychology to determine the mental dexterity or the motor ability. So you have your motor skills. So this tells you that how good are you in those skills. Now those attributes involves your movements of your muscles and the coordination, because you are doing, let's say you're doing again the slicer machine. So in one hand what you're doing is you're putting the slicing of the meat, or you can say we are slicing bacon, we're putting a bacon inside or any such meat inside, and other side we're making sure that we're adjusting the size if it's the right size coming. So when we do that, what's going to happen? You're using your hands and the mind coordination going on, when to stop, till what level your hand should go down and whatnot, which guard should be put so that you don't cut your hands and whatnot, right? Now control, coordination, muscle movements, all those things are working together in your psychomotor or skill test, right? And obviously especially for those workers who are doing semi-skilled skilled jobs and repetitive jobs like packing, assembly work, testing, inspecting and so on, such tests are quite vital to give the information. And as I was explaining you, that hospitality industry is very hands-on and labor intensive. We do a lot of repetitive jobs and we do a lot of assembly work and packaging shoe, especially when you have to put the food back in the cold room or get things from the cold room. Now in the personality test, what we do is we discover clues to the individual's value system. So what does it mean is that whatever actions we do, they reflect back to our values, to our thought process. Whatever decision we take it reflects back to our value system. And obviously, how are you emotionally? I would say, how much emotionally intelligent are you, that you know how your body reacts in a particular situation. So also this test gives an idea about your emotional reactions. It gives us understanding about maturity and obviously the characteristics of the mood. How does your mood behave or work and go in such a situations? So these personality tests actually give us the information on those aspects. Now they do help us. These tests really help us in assessing a motivation of a person, that how a person gets motivated or how much a person is motivated. They also actually let us know in person's ability to adjust the stress level in terms of day-to-day life. So if you're able to adjust the stress on day-to-day life, how are you coping with the stress at your workplace? So do you get stressed out easily, or you have some capacity to manage and hold on and be resilient in the situation? Then comes important part is, in hospitality and tourism, we really work on interpersonal relationship, because we are dealing with human, we're dealing with other staff members, and obviously we need to have good relations with everyone, so that it's a combined effort as a teamwork. So interpersonal relations really work in a long way. And obviously we come to know about projecting an impressive image of him or herself, because what we do is we ask them, okay, let us know about yourself. Now how a person projects himself or herself also comes through in the personality test, because that's how they demonstrate the personality. Having said that, hospitality and tourism industry are more people, I would say, intensive or labor intensive, which is going to go due to COVID-19, that now we're having social distancing, no touch or least touch policy and whatnot, and that many robots are coming in. But again, the person touch remains a person touch. Okay. Now in the personality test, obviously there are some traits that we're looking at in a person, and the traits that we understand, or traits that we actually are related in the personality test that we're looking at, is self-confidence. For sure, this does tell us how a person talks about. This does tell us how a person reacts to such a situation. How do they work on that? Tactics of doing a job, finding a solutions, emotions in terms of running. You can say someone is not able to finish their assigned task, and how are they reacting, or they're quite happy or whatnot. Control means the controlling emotions, the controlling manpower, the controlling money, the controlling resources. And then obviously comes social ability. So that task in terms of personal test comes in how they interact with the team members, how are they able to assist each other, how are they able to stand and work as a team. Now there's an activity and exercise where what we do is we asked when I used to give tests, we asked random people to come in a group and give them to make a tower made up of marshmallows tower. It's called marshmallows tower. So it's a team activity. We give them some sticks and we give them marshmallows. We ask them to make a tower out of those sticks and marshmallows. They actually then work in a team and then try to bring up the marshmallows tower. That gives us an understanding that how they're working as a teamwork. Okay, then comes objective test. So what is we're looking at when doing your personality, even in a personality test, we're looking at the three types, which are objective test, projective test, and the third one that you're looking at is situation test. So let's look at the first one, which is objective test. So obviously we're looking at neurotic tendencies and self-sufficiency. That means how a person is able to respond in terms of given options for objective. and how a person is a dominant or a submissive, and what is the confidence of a person that is brought out by objective test. Now, the other part of the test that comes as a projective test, which is actually a candidate has to project his or her own interpretation into certain standard stimuli. I'll give you explain it further. So when you are actually testing a person and you say, fair enough, how would you solve this problem? What do you think can be done? What are different ways to, your dessert is burned, your food is burned, what do you do? Your sauce is actually brown, what do you do? Your mayonnaise is curdling, what do you do? So this is where we use projective tests and see how a person, reacts, and how do they keep themselves calm and whatnot. So obviously this comes is that it comes down to how they think, what are their values, and how they are decision making as a human. So this comes down to that. So the next one is situation tests. As the name says, it's a situation based test. We put them in a particular situation. Could be a role play, could be we give them, okay, now this is, you are sitting in this room and you have two more colleagues of yours. One is on the wheelchair and other person cannot walk, but there's a fire alarm. What do you do? Or it's a fire in the room. What do you do? So we put them in a situation like in a particular situation so that they actually undergo the actions or the abilities in those stressful situations, and on those stressful situations, can they be creative? Can they bring some solutions, right? And especially when they cannot get any directions, how do they respond? How do they work in the team? So usually what we do is we don't tell them who's a team leader. We put them in a group, we don't say any team leader, and see how they are responding, who's taking the team leading position, and how are they interacting with the team members, how are they responding to the situation, and what solutions they're bringing up, isn't it? Now, with this test, which is situation test, we really come to know about the person's personality. And then comes very, very important is interest test. Now, these tests are, as the name says, to know the areas of interest of a person. So what kind of work is that you like the most? Because having said that, we want to match the best candidate for the the right position. If we know more about them, if you know a lot of them, then we can actually put them in the right position, and hopefully they will really be able to do the justice the job and be happy. Now, obviously these tests are used for vocation guidance. Okay, where can you put them and whatnot? And obviously, these tests are assessed based on asking them all those on the structured questions. So that they demonstrate their personality, and we see where we go and what responses and outcomes we got from the test. Now, also there are some limitations in this test. So nothing is 100% foolproof. So we try to achieve perfection. So the test should not be accepted 100% accurate in analyzing the success of an employee, because sometimes you really work very hard for your exams and you've done hard work, you went to the exam, you vomited out and you write down everything in perfect. You're great when you're doing the exams, but in the real life, not necessarily those 2 days or 3 days or 4 days of just studies will help you. No, you need to have good amount of knowledge in you to be successful, isn't it? So that's why it's very important these things are covered and they are not left out as a limitation. Now, these tests are also not useful if the tests are not designed properly. Means if you're not putting the test properly, if you're not putting the right questions, if you're not executing the test the way it's supposed to be, if no instructions are not clear, obviously the employee may not perform the best way or expected way. And as we all know that our industry is hands-on and interactive. Being hands-on and interactive actually means that talking to people, knowing more about them, keeping them busy and engaged, and also we need to have the skills and the knowledge. We need to have a rapport development skills or interpersonal relationship skills, and obviously these all things, they come in an interview and they get assessed in an interview, and that's a part of the selection for the test. Now there are some precautions that you must take while using this test. The following precautions must be taken. The first is the norms. So there must be set rules to take the test. You cannot take tests for A a different way and B in different way and C in other different way. Now there must be norms for everyone, and obviously these tests must be from a source, and these tests should be having a rules which apply to all. Then some warm-up. What does warm-up means is that a person is already nervous who's come for an interview or test. So it's a good idea to actually give them some overview about the test. What is test asking for? What are the instructions, and what are they supposed to do, or what we expecting from them? And obviously when you do that, the students, they actually get a little bit information on that, and then, or rather say the employees or the prospective employees, when they give answers, they know what their queries are and what are they supposed to answer. So that's where the warm-up comes in picture. And then comes is these tests must be validated or tried and tested before this test come in the public, right? And each test must be given a weightage. How much weightage is that test or the question part A, so that students can take the decision which one they can do and what not. And the last but not the least is the scoring and administration or the interpretation officer. The person must have training, must have knowledge and competencies while they're testing others, right? Now in saying so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to conclude today's topic that what are different types of tests that we covered. What is the aptitude of the potential ability test? We did personality test and limitations of selection test. And last but not the least, we look at the precautions in using this test. In saying so, we understood that tests are quite important, and they really need a lot of careful thought process to be executed, and getting the right candidate selected. Thank you and have a good day.